Hello. The video that follows is one that I had recorded and uploaded some 8+ years ago. And in that video, I was discussing an instance of political violence that was kind of the hot topic at that time. Now, I've chosen to re-upload that video today on the 1-week anniversary of the murder of Charlie Kirk because I think it's got some relevant points to make. But in particular, I wanted to highlight the escalation that I've seen take place in that span of time in a couple of key areas. Now, while the topic of that video was essentially a punch to the head, and of course we've escalated now to this instance of assassination, I'm not suggesting for a moment that, political and ideological assassinations are anything new and that very, very serious violence has not occurred in the past. I think what's more at play here is the way in which that act is being treated and the numbers of people who are willing to essentially endorse or condone something like that, to deem it as actually virtuous, versus, I think, the number of people who would come out previously and say, listen, we can't get behind that. Like, that's a bridge too far. You can't do that. Obviously we have, and I'll make this case in the video, we have standards, we have conventions that we've sort of come to accept as part of living in a civil society, that you don't get to extrajudicially mete out punishment that you've determined in your own mind, and also, in the court of your own brain, determine someone's guilt or innocence, and that this constitutes a vigilantism that we don't accept. And there's been now, I think, an acceptance of that. So the escalation there comes with respect to what people think, in general terms, are acceptable actions to take against someone that you think is engaging in harmful behavior, speech, etc., etc. Even right up to harmful actions, like taking matters into your own hands rather than allowing the mechanisms, the institutions that we had all previously agreed upon were tasked with dealing with those things, so that we could actually still maintain the claim that we have, that we operate under the rule of law, presumption of innocence, and due process, and all of those things. So I think there's definitely been an escalation in that regard that's very troubling. The other escalation that I think is troubling is there seems to be a broadening of the type of person who will get behind things like this, that will accept this as not only acceptable, but actually virtuous to some degree. When Richard Spencer was punched in the head back 8 years ago, the majority of the people who were making the argument that it's okay to punch a Nazi in the head, which was the determination made about him, which made him worthy of this kind of violence, the majority of the people who were doing that were activists, they were ideologues, they were podcasters, they were people who already had kind of a platform, and they were already somewhat on the fringes of, what someone might call radical, and these labels are interesting, but I don't think it would be all that controversial at some point to have said, listen, if you are going to go against the conventions of civil society that we had all previously said this is how we should operate, that's radical. I don't think that's all that controversial to say. But either way, what's happened since then, the escalation that's taken place since then, is now the group of people who are willing to get behind something like this, not just say they're not all that broken up over it, but actually to say this is the virtuous thing to do, this was righteous, there needs to be more of it, we celebrate, we even mock and ridicule and laugh and sneer and jeer. This has now grown to include everyday people. People who would otherwise be considered nobodies. And I don't mean that in some sort of pejorative. I just mean people who are otherwise unknown to society at large. These aren't podcasters and well-known people with platforms. These are just people with a TikTok or an Instagram or a Twitter X handle or whatever that are coming out and making some very, very bold statements. Not all of them are even all that necessarily making a case that a moral case for it. Some of them are, a lot of them are making a moral case. This was the right thing to do, and they're completely behind it, and more of it needs to take place. But a lot of them are actually just, they're nihilistic about it. They're just laughing. They're rejoicing. They're enjoying this moment. And I think that's an escalation that's probably even more troubling in many ways, because of course these people are kind of among us all, whereas the Destiny, the Twitch streamer guy, and people like him, they have a big following and they have a platform, but you and I probably don't live near the guy. Some of these other people, it's quite likely that we do, and I think that's a broadening of something that's troubling. At any rate, I want to leave the video to speak for itself largely, so I'm going to go ahead and let it play from this point forward. And I welcome, of course, any comments or feedback in the comment section below. Of course, I would ask that any such comments be in the spirit of discourse and dialogue, and having a civil society going forward and not having it devolve into something really, really terrible and ugly that likely is going to make victims pretty much of us all. I think that's the concern here. I think the people who are willing to kind of burn it all down, I don't think they understand that they will be victimized by it too. Ultimately, there would be through something like that, likely very few victors. And I think it's likely that those victors would be, sort of authoritarian technocrats who can take advantage of the technologies that we have nowadays for surveillance and control and IDing and potentially even digital currencies and things like that in order to actually control and manipulate us all. And I think it would be short-sighted to think or hope that you'll be on the right side of that somehow, that the ideology of those authoritarian leaders, controllers, is going to match up with yours. So this is a win for you because your will be done. I would be very careful about that kind of a thought process. For now, I'm going to let the video play. Thanks very much for watching. So it's hard for me to believe that we're actually having a debate about whether or not it's okay to punch someone in the face. Of course, it's not really a debate. It's decidedly the opposite of a debate. I would hope that all of the people who are advocating that it's okay to punch a quote-unquote Nazi in the face are expressing this to their children as well. Well, if you have a disagreement with someone, you just punch them in the face. Use your fists. It would be very hypocritical to tell our children to use their words in a dispute and to make sure that we avail ourselves of the proper authorities to make the determinations of guilt and innocence and that sort of thing, and then be punching Nazis in the face on the other side of the coin. Of course, the whole idea that this person is a Nazi and what's being said about anyone who would defend his right not to be attacked violently is a whole other discussion. I mean, obviously, this is just another, you're racist, misogynist, homophobe, etc., etc. There's a label that's been placed on someone. Even neo-Nazi is probably too strong. Is he advocating for gas chambers? What are his actual politics? Of course, so the label Nazi is used there to say, no, it's okay. This is acceptable because of who he is. What he says, not necessarily what he's done. Obviously, what makes the Nazis so horrific, the genuine Nazis, is what they've done, their actions. Their words were a precursor, a prelude, a portion of, but the real injustices were the things that were done to people. We're only concerned about hate speech because its potential to become physical violence. It's the reason we abhor hate speech. And I've heard many of the people who are coming out sort of in defense of this guy being labeled as a carrying water for the Nazis and things like this. These are the Steve Shives of the world. And even I think I heard Alex Botten say something similar. Completely ludicrous. The people who are defending this guy, first of all, they're doing so grudgingly. It's sort of one of these cases of, oh, great, now you're making me defend a neo-Nazi. They're not defending him because they agree with his politics. They're defending him because we live in a system that's governed by the rule of law, and we tacitly agree to that by the way we conduct ourselves. And I mean, these are literally little kangaroo courts that people are holding within their own mind. Whoever punched that guy in the face conducted a little kangaroo court in his own mind. This is something we abhor and we laugh at in lesser countries, their system of justice. And these people who are saying that it's acceptable to punch a Nazi in the face are the same who would otherwise object to police brutality. Now, really, these are not really that much different from one another. This is a little bit of extrajudicial justice being meted out. It's a little mini kangaroo court. It's vigilantism. We recognize and we task our police officers that their job is to bring criminals to justice so that they can stand trial in a court of law where they may face their accusers, where they may provide evidence to their potential innocence, etc., where an actual case using our words is made against them and a determination can be made and an adequate and agreed upon punishment can be meted out. We also recognize that sometimes people don't want to face justice, and we've tasked our police officers with using a reasonable amount of force to accomplish that task. Ruling out instances of self-defense where the perpetrator that the police officer is trying to bring to justice is resisting to the point where it puts the police officer's safety or life in danger, leaving those aside for the moment, we recognize that there's a legitimate, reasonable amount of force, and we object to any extra force beyond that because we kind of recognize that this is extrajudicial justice that the police officer is trying to mete out in the moment, be it a rough ride or a few extra punches to the head or even a bullet. We recognize that it's not up to that police officer to be judge, jury, and executioner in the moment, that his job is to bring that person where they can face in a proper court under proper rule of law their accusers. I see no real difference between the acts of a rogue cop who's out there laying a licking on somebody because he's accused of rape or who knows what, because he thinks it's justified, and he thinks that maybe the cop thinks in his mind he's not really going to get the treatment that he deserves after he faces court. Maybe he's going to get off. Maybe jail's too good for this guy. So he's going to lay a licking on him now and give him a rough ride on the way back to the precinct. We all recognize, and most of us are against that kind of vigilantism. And it blows my mind to watch the same people who would rail against that making excuses for punching a Nazi in the face. Someone who arguably has done nothing physically violent to anyone. It's astounding. And that's the reason I said I hope you're expressing this to your children as well, because you wouldn't want to be a hypocrite. Because the whole point of having any kind of ideals, like the rule of law, like guilty until proven innocent, like violence is not justifiable, that you don't get to take the law into your own hands. The whole point of all of those principles is they must be universalized to make any sense and to be of any use to us whatsoever. We have to universalize the principles. I'm not a pacifist. If someone is committed a crime, and if you are in immediate danger, you can act in self-defense to whatever physical means necessary, and you also have the right to act in self-defense by proxy if someone else is in danger. If someone is being raped out on the street, I get to go and physically assault the rapist, at least to the degree that I can stop the current assault. We all agree on that. But beyond that, you don't get to initiate the use of force against someone else. That's vigilantism. You don't get to make special exceptions for yourself just because you happen to have extrajudicially in your own mind come to the ruling and the conclusion that that person deserves it. That their ideas are so abhorrent, without any kind of debate, without any kind of ability to explain themselves, that whatever you do to them is acceptable. And where does that stop on the scale? Is it just a punch to the face? Does it escalate? Does it escalate to walking into a mosque somewhere and killing a bunch of people? I don't know what the motives were of the most recent shooting here in Canada. But if it is someone who's out there, if the narrative fits that it was some extreme right-winger what has he done? He's meted out a little, what he considers to be extrajudicial justice to some people. The point that is missed by all of these people, the Steve Shives and all of the other people out there that are making excuses for this and saying it's acceptable, the point that they're missing is this isn't about that guy. It's about you, idiot. This whole point of debating whether or not it's acceptable to punch someone in the face is for your protection, not his. Most of the people carrying water for this guy are doing so grudgingly because they don't agree with his politics. But they believe that the best way to expose bad ideas is show them to the light of day. And they also agree in principle that vigilantism is not the way that we conduct ourselves. And if you are going to universalize the principle that it's okay to punch a Nazi in the face, what you're actually saying is vigilantism is acceptable, just as long as you're sure in your mind. And when you do that, you open yourself up to return fire from people who believe just as deeply and with as much conviction in their hearts as you do that you are the wrong, that you're the evil. It's for you and the people you love and innocent people everywhere who are just trying to express their ideas. The marketplace of ideas is where we're supposed to be dealing with all this stuff. And I agree with some of the most recent backlash against modern day atheists, not atheism obviously as a concept, but atheists who fall prey to this moral relativist, leftist kind of agenda, where you've got people like Steve Shives. I'm picking on him now, but I just watched a video of his. And he's talking about how you people who are my opponents keep saying, why don't we have discourse? Why do you block us all preemptively? I mean, I'm blocked by Steve Shives on Twitter and other places. I've never attempted to converse with him. I've never really, I don't think, made a video about him until now. And so why are all you people trying to converse with me? You don't get the point, says Steve Shives. I don't like you. I never will like you. I think you're garbage. In the famous words of Anna Kasparian, I'm fucking better than you. So stop trying to. I will just turn and walk away. You mean nothing to me, etc., etc. What he doesn't realize, and why these people are the enemies of the marketplace of ideas, I'm not sure, because they're going to lose. And that's not a statement of victory, because we're all going to lose if we fail to keep reason and rationality and debate and open discourse and freedom of speech open. And advocating for just being able to extrajudicially decide that someone deserves a punch in the face, or who knows, maybe a bullet in the head, will destroy that. The thing that these people don't seem to understand is, just because, in the case of Steve Shives, just because you ignore someone doesn't mean they go away. Just because you dismiss someone doesn't mean they go away. Saying I'm fucking better than you doesn't do anything. Punching a Nazi in the face doesn't do anything. He's not discouraged. In fact, some people will be emboldened. Some people will dig in. And they will stop trying to convince with their words. And they will resort to violence as well. Are we actually destined to be in this lockstep Hatfield and McCoy's feud as human beings forever? Or are we ever going to use our fucking words? They don't go away. When you think that your ideological opponents just disappear because you're dismissive of them, because you attach labels to them, racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, etc., Nazi, when you think they go away, Trump happens. They don't go away. You engage people. You expose their ideas for being vacuous. You show where they're wrong, and you do it out in the public where everyone can see, so that everyday, average, reasonable people, the people who are mostly silent in this so-called debate, can see it and can go, oh, that makes sense. I was wrong. This is right. Or, yes, this is what I've been saying all along, but no one listens. Or, I can't risk being political in my particular sphere of influence, etc., etc. The open marketplace of ideas was supposed to be where secularists came to show their wares. This was supposed to be the arena where we said, religious superstition be damned. You have to demonstrate to me why your ideas are superior. And I am not obligated to accept anything that you say I should do unless you can demonstrate to me that your reasoning behind it is sound. That's what atheism was supposed to be about, right? Rationality, empiricism, reason, arguments. And now we've just succumbed to this moral relativism that says, hey, if you can make the determination in your mind that that guy's a bad actor, feel free to dismiss, attach whatever labels you would like, all the while decrying anyone who would do that to you or your kind, or punch them in the face. And again, where does it stop? Punches in the face? Why am I even saying any of this? You know, it's current year. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. And the amount of misrepresentations, I feel like the hardcore radicals in our world have really put it into overdrive. And most of it has to do with making accusations that they may or may not be baseless. We don't fucking know because nobody's made a case for anything. And they're not willing to debate. I mean, that's probably why the Steve Shives of this world don't want to have discourse or debate. They've already been ripped apart quite openly by other people on YouTube, but their own viewers don't get an opportunity to see that. These are polarized viewerships of, say, Atheism is Unstoppable and Steve Shives. They got their polarized viewerships, at least on the Steve Shives side of things anyway. Those people are closed off, right? They're probably all using the block bots that Steve Shives is to control the amount of counter information that might ever enter their precious brains. If you find yourself being that resistant to an idea, the wisest thing and the most intellectually honest to yourself thing that you can do is to investigate it and go right to the sources. Go to the people who advocate for that position and avail yourself of all their best arguments. Don't close yourself off to it, throw a bunch of labels at someone, and then run around advocating for violence against them, because the violence that's visited on them will be visited on you. And you will have no excuse for it. You'll have no reason to complain, because all that will be is the universalization of the principle. The principle that says, if I decide, using my own reason in my own head, extrajudicially, that this person deserves some form of justice, then I get to enact that. And people with different ideological positions than you, who believe just as fervently that they're in the right, will make those same determinations and will come looking for you. The whole point of defending this guy is we're talking about you and everyone you love and everyone else. It's not even really about that guy. Why am I even making this video? Makes me want to just move up into the bush. And I probably would if it weren't for the fact that most of the people that surround me in the area where I live are very, very good-natured. More traditionalist, I suppose, in the sense that, sure, a lot of them are religious. They don't really impose that on me. I'm an atheist mechanic. But they believe in the things that they teach their children. You don't get to hit someone. You don't get to take things that don't belong to you. You use your words. If you have a problem, you go to someone in authority who's tasked with solving those problems for you. You don't have the right to touch someone inappropriately. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And if you have a dispute, you use your words. And if your words don't work, you go get someone to help you, an advocate. Why am I making this video? Thanks for watching.